With that, I'd like to move on to the next item, which is let's see, I think it's are we on to the motion or the consent agenda? Did we already do the consent agenda here?
There is no consent agenda. Yep.
There is
Motion 7, special orders.
Yes, so we are on to item 7A.
Okay.
Motion 2020-07, a motion of the Port of Seattle Commission to provide immediate relief and support to port employees and port tenants and concessionaires.
Thank you, Amy. We're going to hear next from our Executive Director, Steve Metrick.
Commissioners, we have 3 important action items for your consideration today to help port businesses to get on the road to recovery. Thank you to the Commission for its leadership in developing these initial recommendations, and we look forward to further steps soon. Item 7A is a Commission motion providing guidance about implementing short-term relief to help maintain continuity of port-affiliated businesses. Airlines have greatly reduced services here and around the country, and many airport businesses have had to close their doors and reduce hours in employment, such as we've heard. The port has a significant interest in preserving the viabilities of these businesses throughout the port so that they are ready and able to provide services when the economy rebounds and people start flying again and using other services of the port. In keeping with keeping those businesses open provides much needed employment with benefits for thousands of people at the airport. At this time, I'd like to ask Lance Little to provide a short overview of operational impacts and requests for relief, and then our financial situation. So, Lance.
Thank you, Terry. I love you.
Lance, you should be unmuted now. Let me know.
Thank you. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, commissioners, members of the public. Current situation at the airport, has Executive Director Metrick alluded to. We have seen significant reduction in our operations at the airport, both in terms of passengers as well as aircraft operation at the airport. I guess the only ray of light is cargo, which has increased, and we're assuming we've seen an increase in cargo because there are more people at home ordering stuff. In terms of the airport dining and retail program, they've taken a huge hit. Up to yesterday, we had 58 locations that were closed and 31 that remained open. That was yesterday. That could have changed today. And as Executive Director Metrick said earlier, the indication of how drastic this is the number of people coming through the our security checkpoint. Last year at this time would be anywhere in the 50,000 to 54,000. Yesterday, we saw 3,500 people coming through the airport. The airlines have cut their capacity significantly. Alaska Delta at about 70%, United American at about 50 to 60%, Southwest 31%. So the impact on ground transportation, on ADR, all our tenants at the airport has been significant. We have done multiple forecasts in terms of the employment. We're looking at now at an overall reduction throughout the year. Based on our analysis of about 44% over the year. However, there are months when we expect the traffic to dip approximately 90% and 70%, especially in the immediate month. We've had requests for release from pretty much all our tenants: airlines, airport dining and retail, rental cars, flight kitchen, parking, dog fox, ground transportation, and others. We've done a lot of analysis. We have looked at multiple options. We have done financial modeling. And we think at this point in time, we are able to provide relief to some of our tenants here at the airport. And of course, there are risks associated with these tenants. But we think based on the forecast that we have done and the stimulus package that we will receive some form of benefit from, that we can manage this risk. Again, there are risks, but we think that we can manage it and provide relief to our tenants.
Great. Thanks, Lance. Thanks to you and all your team for what you're doing out there at the airport. At this time, Commissioners, I'd like to turn it over to Eric Schinfeld and Aaron Pritchard for the Commission staff to discuss the motion.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Eric Schinfeld. I'm joined by Aaron Pritchard. What we are considering first here today is motion 2020-07, a motion of the Port of Seattle Commission to provide immediate relief and support to port employees and port tenants and concessionaires. I think, as you all well know, one of the most important things we can do to support the regional and statewide economy here in Washington State is to ensure continuity of operations for the port's facilities. Whether you're talking about the airport, our marine cargo terminals, cruise terminals, and fishing marinas, these are all assets of statewide significance, and their continued operation is really essential not only to the statewide economy, but all of the individuals, businesses that rely on the port and its services. And of course, the port cannot continue to operate without two important things. Number one, its own employees being healthy and safe and able to work. And number two, all of those businesses that the port works with and relies on to continue to function to also be sustainable and have their employees be healthy and safe. And so today's motion is really the first of several pieces of guidance that you will give the executive director to make sure that within the limited resources that we do have, we are prioritizing in the short term investment of those resources into those priorities. If we take care of our employees, if we take care of our tenants and concessionaires, residents at our facilities, and of course their employees, we will be able to do our job operating these facilities and continuing to provide that statewide benefit. So let me turn over to Aaron Pritchard, who will now walk through the very specific items in this motion.
Aaron, I'm going to make sure you get the prompt again, so give me one moment to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Lauren. Commissioners, I will go over a higher level review of the text of the relief motion. There's 4 key sections I want to cover. First, the Commission restates the priority regarding the health and safety and well-being of port employees and supports the ongoing efforts of the Executive Director to enact workplace policies to keep our people safe. And to support this, the Commissioner has given the Executive Director the ability to expend up to $1 million without Commission approval to support this sort of employee health, well-being, and safety. Second, the relief motion has a statement of importance for our tenants to provide payments and benefits to employees and urging our tenants to continue to support their employees throughout this pandemic. Third section is regarding our port tenants and concessionaires. The motion authorizes the Executive Director to implement immediate financial relief to port tenants and concessionaires in a manner that is consistent with the port financial interests and benefits the residents of King County. In particular, the motion states that we should consider those who have been directly affected by the pandemic, can reasonably commit to continued operations, and provide essential services to the Port of Seattle. Finally, the motion calls out to ensure that our liveaboards who have at our marinas will not face any eviction, and that our tenants of Port Seattle facilities will not face eviction for inability to pay rent, and that is extended through June 30th of 2020. I'll turn it back over to the Port of Seattle Commission.
And let me just make 2 quick clarifications, Aaron, before we turn things over to commissioners. One, I want to make sure it's very clear to everybody listening that while later we will consider, you will consider actions related to the airport, this motion is port-wide. So this does talk about relief to all of the various lines of business throughout the port. And then finally, the other item to clarify, as Aaron was mentioning, the last piece is around evictions and protections of both tenants and residents. This motion and the prohibition on evictions applies to any tenants at any port facilities as well as residents. So whether you are a small business or a nonprofit at a port facility, or you are a quote-unquote liveaboard or another mortgage customer, that eviction prohibition extends to everyone at the port.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a few brief remarks before we open it up for full commission discussion and possible amendments to the motion. This is the relief and support motion, and I have to say once again, it is our highest priority, the safety, health, and well-being of all our employees in the port community. Over the past few weeks, the Commission has been listening to our port community, the companies, organizations, tenants, and employees that do business with the port. They've shared their concerns about the COVID-19 virus and the real impacts it has had on their lives and their businesses. And to all, we hear you, and we are responding. Our business partners and their employees urgently need financial help now while they await for federal relief. We will stand together strong through this unprecedented global health crisis. That's why the Commission has worked hard with our Executive Director and our Executive Leadership team to see an amazing team at that, what we can do within our authority and resources to provide help. The functional continuity and business operations of the port are, of course, vital to preventing greater disruption in the current emergency conditions we're living under. And our business partners and their employees are keeping the port operating during this challenging time. And we're also maintaining the supply chain for vital supplies that are including those coming through air cargo that provide necessary medical equipment and urgently needed other supplies to deal with the health crisis. This is an initial relief package, and we fully expect there will be more coming as we continue to assess the needs of our business partners and their employees. The motion is broad, it's high level, and it may not answer all of the specifics that people want to hear. We will continue to work on all of those issues, but it gives overarching authority here to work together to provide the relief and provide our Executive Director and his leadership team with the necessary authority and direction to accomplish those needs. So thank you once again to the tremendous leadership team, Port Commissioners, my colleagues, Executive Director, for your tireless efforts over the past few weeks to respond to the COVID-19 crisis and putting this relief package together. I know everybody would like to see us get through this, and we will. So with that, let's move on to Commissioner comments, questions, and possible amendments.
All right, and Commissioner Steinbrook, I will go in reverse order and be starting with Commissioner Fellman. So I will prompt you to unmute yourself, and Commissioner Fellman.
I'd like to suggest that we have a motion and second for the motion before we move on to discussion and amendments.
Good idea. Let's introduce the motion. Well, the motion has been introduced, and let's take a vote on the motion.
So at this time, we just need a second.
I'm sorry, we need a second. So is there a second to the motion?
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and the discussion can continue now.
I'd like to propose an amendment to motion 2020-07 and edit on page 2, line 76. And can I read this edit?
Please do. And do we have that transmitted electronically?
I did send it to you, and I sent it to Amy as well.
Yes, Commissioners, it is in your email inboxes from
Okay,
Aaron
so we have
Pritchard.
to go to our email inboxes to see it, okay?
That's correct.
All right, Fred, Commissioner Fellman.
It is 2 sentences, and it reflects conversations that we've had. A new section, like I said, on page 76, line 76, assistance in finding relief from other entities. The port will develop an outreach program for its tenants and employees to facilitate their ability to access local, state, and federal relief resources. This program will be established as soon as possible, following additional clarity provided by the agencies as to the eligibility and application of relief programs. And that concludes my edit.
Okay, is everyone able to see the text on that? I'm not finding it right now.
I just emailed it again, Commissioners. It should be in the top of your email inbox now.
Okay, all right. All right, let's open for comments. Thank you.
All right, next we will go to Commissioner Cho.
Do we need a second to the amendment? There's a motion to amend. In order to open for comment, I think we need to have a second to the amendment.
Yes, you do need to second the amendment, and then you can discuss and vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion.
Okay, is there a second to Commissioner Fellman's amendment? Once again, is there a second to the amendment? Maybe they,
I
I just got unmuted. I'm happy to second.
all right, it's been moved and seconded by Commissioner.
Can I
Fellman.
ask
Okay, now-
Commissioner Fellman for clarification, or maybe Eric Schinfeld? So I am looking at multiple drafts of different motions, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page. We are currently working on the motion that is has as description to provide immediate relief and support to port employees and port tenants and concessionaires. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I believe, Fred, you may be, sorry, Commissioner Fellman, you may be seeking to amend the motion that reads to provide guidance for port leadership in prioritizing port investments. Is that correct?
No, he's amending this motion.
Okay, so it's under the statement of support?
It's just above the statement of support.
Yes, it would be after the eviction section, before the statement of support, and it would be adding direction to develop an outreach program to make sure that all folks associated with the port, we help them access whatever federal resources are available.
It's local, state, federal. now.
Thank you for the clarification.
And I'm sorry if there's multiple versions floating around. It was really just a grammatical update.
Oh, thank you, Lauren.
Yep. Thought that might help.
Right, and what Lauren is showing is not the motion, but rather the initial version of the motion, not the amendment.
Correct.
Right, so we would go in at 76.
Got it. That's great. Thank you.
Would you like me to read it again just to make sure we all have the same version?
That would be helpful for your clerk.
The port will develop an outreach program for its tenants and employees to facilitate their ability to access local, state, and federal relief resources. This program will be established as soon as possible following additional clarity provided by the agencies as to the eligibility and application of relief programs.
Okay.
Great,
So that-
got it, thanks.
Yeah, and that is a different version than what Eric put up for us, or excuse me, sent us by email just minutes ago. There's additional language and specificity there. So just to point that out.
And Lauren is trying to put up the most recent version that I think we have on your screens now. So Commissioner Fellman, if that's not exactly right, let us know, but that's at least the general flavor and the point of what you're trying to get to.
He has.
No, this is what I think we originally had. I had sent Aaron and Pete updated versions of this. This was what was originally
All
drafted.
right. I just want to point out that there's more than one version that we're seeing and
Right,
hearing.
so apologies. So Lauren, take this off the screen, please. Apologies for that that confusion
And,
there.
Commissioner Feldman, I'd like to ask for a clarification in terms of intent, and I would also just make the comment that the port has been doing extensive outreach up to this point that has brought us to these two motions today, and we will continue to do so, but this formalizes it. But where it references tenants and employees, is it your intent that we are to call for assistance or outreach to tenants, employees, to their own employees who are not employees of the port, as well as other employees of the port?
I appreciate that that need for clarity. I was assuming it would apply to both.
Okay, because and the port, of course, has employees who may be seeking certain supports as well. So I just wanted to be clear in terms of what our goal is here, to help our business tenants, their employees, and the port's employees. Is that accurate?
It could be, yes, tenants, their employees, and port employees.
Okay, so everybody's included there, basically. But
That
the
was my
emphasis,
intent.
yeah. Okay, that's what I thought you meant. Okay, other commissioner comments, questions? Okay, hearing none.
Oh,
Well, the
hang on,
clerk-
let me make sure that, let's go through one by one.
Okay.
So Commissioner Fellman, are you complete with your remarks?
I am. I will just give you the most updated one here in 1 second.
Okay, I believe I was just showing it just a moment ago, but please let me know if that is not the case. And then next we will go to Commissioner Cho.
I support this motion. I have no further questions. Or this amendment, excuse me.
Okay, great. And then Commissioner Calkins. Commissioner Calkins?
Yeah, I just I want to make a point of thanking Commissioners Bowman and Fellman for identifying in the section just above the proposed amendment that because of the unique nature of the residents at the recreational marinas and the liveaboards, they may or may not have been covered under other protections that have rolled out in the face of the COVID crisis. And so I'm really glad that we called them out and to ensure that there won't be undue impacts to that community as well. So thank you to the two of you.
All right, and then Commissioner Bowman.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, excellent. I just have a couple of points I wanted to call out on the motion. First, under the section about port employees, I wanted to call out that we're providing some guidance to the executive director, who I know is already moving in that direction, but priority shall be given to maintaining employment and benefits to the greatest extent possible. Our employees here at the Port of Seattle are like employees everywhere around the county and the state, worried about whether they are going to be able to have a job when this is all over. And I really appreciate our executive director taking a hard look at maintaining employment for our staff. The second point is the next paragraph. I wanted to again call out that the commission is making a fairly significant change to the delegation of authority for the executive director to expend up to $1 million without commission approval to advance efforts that will help employees telework. This is important. I think it's important for us to get out of the way and let him make decisions as quickly as possible so that this organization can continue to function as expediently as possible during this crisis. So Steve, you and I actually did not have a chance to discuss this, but I didn't think that you would be opposed.
I'm not opposed, Commissioner. Thank you.
Okay, good. Third, I wanted to call out in the section starting at, let me think, sentence 62, where we're providing some guidance in terms of how the staff would look at short-term economic relief. And the first of those is that those tenants that are most directly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and restrictions that have been placed upon their businesses to address it. It is really challenging. Most people don't realize the many functions that the Port of Seattle has. By example, in addition to the airport and the seaport and the cruise business, which the public is probably most aware of, we also have more than 250 landside tenants in our different buildings. So we want to provide some guidance to the staff about how to mitigate the impacts of the crisis, but again, prioritize those that are most directly affected. It's going to be a daunting task, and I know they're going to be coming forward to us over the next week or 2 weeks or month to identify those first. It's challenging to provide relief to absolutely everybody that's impacted, but we really need to get those whose businesses have been shuttered because of the governor's stay-at-home order should be, in my opinion, at the top of the list. And then finally, I wanted to call out to Commissioner Calkins. Thank you for recognizing the language that we included about the liveaboard tenants. We were not sure whether Mayor Durkin's order about no evictions applied, and so we just wanted to make sure that our liveaboard tenants and other mortgage customers realize that they have a safety net under them through June 30th, 2020, regardless of whether the city pulls back on their directive regarding evictions. So with that, thank you to the staff for all of your work, and I'm happy to support the motion moving forward.
Are there other commissioner comments at this time before we call for a vote? I want to add my thanks to all the commissioners. There are many eyes have been on this and worked on it. around the clock over the past week or so, staff, leadership, team, commissioners, and this is a collective effort, but I want to especially thank Commissioner Bowman for her being the driving force behind, in particular, the urgency of this and need for immediate relief measures that we can undertake. So thank you, Commissioner Bowman. Thank you to all of the commissioners. And with that, I'd like to ask for the clerk to call the roll on a vote.
Okay, first I am going to read the amendment and call for a vote on the amendment.
Okay, and then we'll do the amended main
And then
motion.
we will vote on the amended motion.
Okay, thank you for
So
keeping us
the
on track.
amendment is to insert at line 76, new subheading, assistance in finding relief from other entities. The port will develop an outreach program for its tenants, their employees, and port employees to facilitate their ability to access local, state, and federal relief resources. This program will be established as soon as possible, following additional clarity provided by the agencies as to the eligibility and application of relief programs.
Okay, clerk,
Okay.
please call the roll.
So a vote on the amendment, Commissioner Bowman,
Yes.
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Let me get him unmuted.
Aye.
Commissioner Cho,
Aye.
Commissioner Fellman,
Aye.
and Commissioner Steinbrook.
Aye. There are 5 yeas and 0 nays. The motion to amend passes. Now we'll move to the main motion as amended.
Okay, so Commissioner Bowman,
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Cho,
Aye.
Commissioner Fellman,
Aye.
and Commissioner Steinbrook.
Aye.
With the vote, the motion passes.
Motion
feel like a
passes as
teacher.
amended. Next item, clerk.
Okay, item 7B is authorization for the executive director to take such immediate short-term actions as necessary to implement airport relief measures in response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, Executive Director Metric.
Commissioners, item 7B would authorize me to implement a number of temporary measures such as deferring minimum guarantees and charges on gross revenues. Now, there were some original documents, as I think has been noted. There's lots of developments and lots of things going on related to the coronavirus and its impacts across all the operations, and especially at the airport. Through a number of consultations with the staff and with commissioners, I'm actually changing my my action memo has been changed from the previous memo to what I'm presenting before you today for your consideration. I'm proposing that the deferrals that I'll talk about in a second is go through and justified or is laid out in the memo, which is deferrals for 2 months, with the port gathering information from tenants and concessionaires to assess the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic before considering an additional 2 months extension. And the categories is broken down for relief in the memo. For airlines, we propose the following: accelerate 2019 settlement and revenue sharing, maintain rates at budgeted levels for fiscal year 2020, consider deferral of rent and landing fees on a month-by-month basis afterwards. For airport dining and retail, defer percentage of the minimum annual guarantee payments and percentage of the gross revenues for 2 months, with consideration for an additional 2 months at a future date. For rental car businesses, defer percentage of minimum annual guarantee payments and a percentage of rent for 2 months, with consideration for an additional 2 months at a later date. For remote parking, defer percentage of remaining minimum annual guarantee payments and a percentage of rent for 2 months, with consideration for an additional 2 months at a later date. For ground transportation, including taxis, TNCs, and courtesy shuttles, defer percentage of remaining minimal annual guarantee payments and percentage of rent for 2 months, with consideration for additional 2 months at a later date. For non-aeronautical properties such as flight kitchens, defer percentage of remaining minimum annual guarantee payments and a percentage of rent for 2 months with consideration for additional 2 months at a later date. And for non-aeronautical terminal businesses such as the CLEAR program, defer percentage of minimum annual guarantee payments and a percentage of rent for 2 months with consideration for additional 2 months at a later date. We view these initial actions as laid out in the action memo to be followed up by other assistance in the coming weeks. We need to understand the full impact and benefit of the federal relief legislation for airlines and for other businesses, airport businesses, and all small businesses and their workers. So within this is laid out in here. I look forward to answering any questions about this request under your consideration.
Okay. All right. Is Lance going to speak to any of the items here, or does that conclude your opening?
That concludes it, but Lance is available to answer any questions.
If Lance is there, I'd like to ask to go back to the relief being offered to the airlines regarding the language consider deferral of rent and landing fees on a month-to-month basis. What exactly is meant by that, and what is the intention?
Lance, you should have gotten a prompt to unmute. Let me try again.
Okay, can you guys hear and see me?
We sure can. Well, we can hear you.
And see me? I'm trying to. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, Commissioner. So the intent here was to, as I said earlier, to accelerate the accelerate the fees for the airlines, which would effectively give them cash flow relief immediately. However, with regards to deferring landing fees and rents, what we wanted to do is to get a better understanding of how the stimulus package benefits will impact the airlines before we make a decision on deferring their landing fees and rents. And so we wanted to have that by that time for us to make that decision. However, in the meantime, with the acceleration of the revenue sharing with them and deferring or keeping the rents or the rates that they are, the airlines will benefit significantly in terms of cash flow or immediate cash flow.
Okay, so as we all know, the airlines are in a tailspin downward with regard to cash flow, and I just wanted to have clarification on what the intent was there and how much time may be needed to better understand, as you say, the federal relief provisions.
Well, we're even trying to understand the relief package as it impacts us, the airports, our portion. So we're trying to understand that as well and trying to understand better the airlines and what advantages. The airlines have a combination of grants as well as loans. So we're trying to understand what which aspect of the stimulus package they will take advantage of, and if we do need to provide any additional relief, if any at all. So we're still trying to do that analysis. We haven't completed that yet. This gives us about a month in order for us to do that.
So you think it's going to take a month then for?
No, I don't think it will take us a month, but we have at least a month. I hope we can understand it in a much shorter time than a month.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I'm going to open this up to commission comments, but first I'd like to just add that the previous motion focused on immediate financial relief for those doing business with the port as well as their employees. This motion is focused on a longer-term, high-level economic recovery approach and strategy. So with that, I'd like to invite commissioners to comment.
All right, and we will go in reverse order again. So Commissioner Fellman, you should have gotten a prompt to unmute.
Thank you. I just would like to note that in the same spirit in which Lance spoke to the need for information, while not being a condition of extending potential MAG relief for the other tenants at the airport, having the information for us to know how this COVID crisis is impacting them is very valuable information for the port, and to be able to definitely defend our actions to support the tenants and how they can support their employees. So this additional data would be very helpful to us in defending those decisions.
Okay, other commissioners? Yeah. All right. Clerk? Other commissioner comments? Clerk?
Commissioner Cho?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I want to take a second to really thank the staff for all the work that they've done. I don't think that people in the public especially are aware of how much time has been put into all of this. For the past few weeks, our staff have been working around the clock, and even this motion we're considering today, making changes and updates to the very last minute. So I really want to thank the staff for all of their hard work. And I also just want to reemphasize that, not to, continue to make the same point over and over again, but we're truly in uncertain times right now. And the decisions that we make as a commission and as an organization are pretty much on uncertain and incomplete data. And so I would ask, our stakeholders, our partners, our tenants, and anyone else who may be listening to really just be patient with us and really work with us. Part of the reason why we're asking for your help in collecting the data is, to make sure that we're doing the right thing. And that's what we want to do. And I think that hopefully we've made it clear as a commission what our values are and what our priorities are and what we're trying to do. And we're just trying to do the right thing for everybody. And so I want to thank everyone in advance, all our stakeholders and partners and our tenants in advance, for providing that information to us so that we can then take that and make the right decisions. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks.
All right, and then we will go. Commissioner Calkins?
Yeah, thank you. Just a few thoughts on this. The last 2 weeks have been a period in which staff and we commissioners have been meeting more frequently than certainly we've ever met during the 2.5 years that I've been a commissioner. And we've been in this process of determining both the immediate impacts of the coronavirus on the people and organizations who rely on the port for their livelihoods. But we've also been trying to figure out what resources we have at our disposal. And as of a week ago when we met, we were struggling to figure out when we were going to hit bottom. I don't think we've determined that yet, although we are starting to get a much better sense of the scope and scale of this crisis. We have also been really steadfast, I think, across the board in leadership in identifying that our responsibility lies first and foremost with the preservation of the port and with our employees, because it is essential that we remain available for our community as a critical link in the supply chain and to be able to serve the economic recovery once we do pass through this pandemic. The relief measures that we're talking about today for stakeholders at the Port of Seattle are unprecedented, both in their scope and their duration, but these are unprecedented times. And so I'm really proud of our leadership in previous years to ensure that they managed wisely the resources that we had in those good times, so that now that we're in a position of crisis, we do have the capacity to provide some relief. I also understand that this relief is not sufficient to ensure that our tenants and concessionaires and contractors and all their employees are able to weather this crisis alone. And for this reason, I support Fred's efforts to direct our staff to help our partners navigate federal and state relief programs that are rolling out now. But I think there's more to do. And my concern right now with our relief programs, which I fully support and will vote on moving forward, is that there's one key segment that is not addressed directly, and that is those workers who have supported the Port of Seattle or our partners over the last few years who are now thrown into financial uncertainty, similar to what we've heard from our business partners. There is short-term financial relief available to many of them in the form of stimulus checks that are coming and unemployment insurance. But I'm particularly concerned that so many workers are at risk or have already lost healthcare coverage in the middle of a pandemic. And this absolutely represents a threat to business continuity for the port and our ecosystem. And so I believe that while this initial immediate relief package is a very good start, I think we need to do more, and we need to be exploring every avenue at the Port of Seattle to ensure that those workers who have fallen through the cracks or in particular have lost healthcare coverage, that we are seeking to avail them of resources either directly or through partners that will ensure that they have coverage in whatever coverage gap they're experiencing right now, and that over the long term, we set up systems in place so that this never happens again. And I think there's more to talk about in the following motion, but with that, I will leave it to Commissioner Bowman.
Okay.
All right, and then next we can hear from Commissioner Bowman. I'm going to prompt you to unmute yourself.
Great, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. First of all, I want to say I agree 100% and support the direction that Commissioner Calkins is going of looking outside of just Port of Seattle boundaries about how we can help those employees most impacted. But I want to speak specifically to the motion in front of us. And first of all, say I know that our tenants have been experiencing this for weeks. I will say it's been a very painful last couple of days in trying to figure out the best way to provide immediate relief to all of you. While this motion does not go as far as all of us would like it to go, it's a good first, I hope you feel that it's a good first start. The additional, we're providing immediate relief for 2 months, and the additional 2 months is predicated on the ability to assess the impact to individual businesses. What I've learned, and my colleagues have learned over this process, is that there are many, many ways in which we are actually handcuffed in providing help. One is that we are a special purpose government, not a general purpose government. I'm not going to give you a civics lesson, but what that means is that we are not able to provide the type of relief that you can see from a city or a county where we're able to just grant funds out. Number two, we all face the prohibition by the state's constitution on the gift of public funds or the lending of public credit, which is why we have to do rent deferrals and not waivers. And number three, most important at the airports, or not most important, but specifically for the airport, FAA guidelines require that the airport be both self-sustaining and treat all classes of tenants the same. That makes it very, very challenging. I'm speaking right now from a very personal level, that what that means is that the FAA is giving us guidance that we have to treat all businesses, large and small, locally owned, or those headquartered outside the US, the same. That is very, very challenging to do. So the relief in front of us, I believe the staff has done the very best job that they can do to provide an initial cut at how we can help everybody. I wanted to say that I appreciate so much all of those businesses that have prioritized their employees by continuing to provide health insurance, even for those furloughed or laid off. I realize that the smallest of our tenants may not be able to do so right now, but those companies that can, especially the largest companies, my personal hope is that you will continue to lean in and provide those benefits to the employees that need them. A business is only successful because of its employees, and we want all of the businesses at SeaTac to be successful. Again, this is not our final action. Similar to Congress, it's just the first start of how to help. You will get continued support from the Port of Seattle Commission and our executive. We're looking at those efforts every single day. But I hope that, again, you'll view this as our commitment to helping you get back on your feet, surviving this crisis. And we're all looking forward to the day very, very soon where business starts to increase again at the airport. Thank you so much for your patience. As I think Commissioner Cho and Commissioner Feldman mentioned earlier, thank you for your patience in working with us and understanding that we're doing everything that we can right now, and we'll continue to look at all of our ways to help you.
Okay, before we take this to a vote, I'd just like to add a couple of additional comments. Once again, just to clarify that this really sets the stage for further actions. The focus here is more specific with regard to our airport and our airport tenants and employees and airlines. But the executive director will give the executive director, Steve Metrick, additional direction for developing further economic relief for other parts of our port organization, including the maritime and real estate. The port is uniquely positioned to be one of the leading public agencies to help in the drive for recovery, given what our core mission is, which of course is to promote economic opportunity, quality of life in the region, advance trade, commerce, travel, and job creation. We're the most trade-dependent states in the nation, with approximately 1 in 4 people who are employed in some form or fashion in that trade business. So we also have a commitment to being equitable, accountable, and environmentally responsible. So this sets the course, and I want to add additional thanks to our Pro Tem Chief of Staff, Eric Shinfield, for really jump-starting this and recognizing that we're going to need to have a path forward here. The virus and its current health crisis that has been created will probably go away before the economic recovery is fully reached. So we know that, or we believe that, and so we're looking with an eye to the longer term here in consideration of this motion. Thank you all, and with that, unless there are further comments or questions, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Commissioner, would you like to go through each commissioner again for additional comments or questions first before we take the vote?
I would say if anyone wishes to speak, let's do that now. Okay. But I think we've had some very good comments made and clarifications in terms of intent and direction here.
Okay. I will go first to Commissioner Feldman. Commissioner Feldman? This is for any additional questions or comments on item 7B.
No, that's fine.
I want to be sure everyone's had a chance to speak.
Great. Commissioner Cho, any additional comments?
No further comments or questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Calkins?
No further comments.
And Commissioner Bowman?
No further comments.
Okay, that does it. I have no further comments, so is there a motion to authorize?
So we will need a motion and second, but first I'd like to clarify that you are voting on authorization for the executive director to take such immediate short-term actions as necessary to implement airport relief measures in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This will include, there is an amended action memo, which will be uploaded to our meetings portal shortly after the meeting.
Okay. With that, will the clerk call the roll on the motion?
Can we have a motion and a second? Okay.
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Bowman?
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cho?
Aye.
Commissioner Feldman?
Aye.
And Commissioner Steinbrook?
Aye.
That is 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Okay. With that, we move on to item 8.
Actually, this is item 7C.
I'm sorry.
We're all sevens today. Motion 2020-06, a motion of the Port of Seattle Commission to provide guidance for port leadership in prioritizing port investments to assist local, regional, and statewide economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay.
Commissioners, this final action, 7C, is important guidance on longer-term actions to rebuild the economy of this region and the state. This is really a positive looking forward, and really where we need to be looking is, as we talk about these other measures to address the response phase, this is looking into the recovery phase. You know, as we talk about this, the port has been here for over 100 years, and we will be here coming out the other side of this pandemic. And so really under this guidance that we're looking forward to today from you provides the priorities and principles to look across the different elements that we have in our role to be positioned going into our recovery phase. Covering, as the briefers will talk about, both port employees and our partners, our capital programs, our economic development and community investments. This guidance that you'll provide today should help us focus our efforts and really for our team now to work together with you to be prepared when we come out the other side of this recovery. So with that, I'm going to turn it to the presenters, Eric Schinfeld and Aaron Pritchard.
All right, commissioners, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much. So again, Eric Schinfeld, Interim Commission Chief of Staff, joined again by Aaron Pritchard. And I'll restate some of the things that Commissioner Steinbrook and Executive Director Metric already said. Maybe to just start off with just a point of personal privilege here. It was really gratifying to start the drafting of this motion that you see before you here today. It is very difficult for a lot of us, whether we work at the port or tenants and concessionaires, other businesses related to the port, or just individuals who use our facilities, to think beyond the day-to-day crisis that we're in right now. And it can be very overwhelming, and feelings of hopelessness and despair are absolutely appropriate during this time. And so it is really a wonderful thing to be able to think about the time when this crisis will end. And as we know, it will end whenever that does. We don't know exactly when. And to be at the Port of Seattle, which, as has been said already, is just so uniquely qualified and uniquely situated to be able to play an incredibly essential role in the recovery of our local, regional, and statewide economy. We are formed by the state specifically to preserve, create, and distribute public benefit. And we do that in a number of ways, certainly by operating our facilities, creating jobs, investing in economic development, investing in infrastructure, but also the things that people don't necessarily always think about the port: equity, sustainability, quality of life. All of these things are tools that we have at our disposal to ensure that the recovery is not just economic, but truly a societal recovery in every sense of the word. And that's really something that is guided by the port's values, the port's mission, and all of the port's programs that we want to bring to bear as we start to think about recovery. We don't know when that recovery will start, and we don't know exactly what it will look like. And so this is not a motion that gives very specific direction about exactly what to do. As Executive Director Metric said, this is really a motion that starts with principles, starts with prioritization and criteria. And as we get a better sense of when that recovery will begin and exactly what it looks like, the Executive Director and his staff will have the tools and the guidance to be able to then implement this motion and start to figure out exactly how we contribute and in all the different ways that we contribute. And let me just say one last thing before I turn things over to Aaron Pritchard to walk through in greater detail exactly what's in this motion. As I've heard from all commissioners, there's an incredible opportunity that the port has to not only ensure that there is a recovery, but to shape what that recovery looks like and to have the region be in a better place than it was even before the COVID emergency started. And what commissioners mean by that and what we try to reflect in this motion is we don't just want things to go back to being the same. We want them to be better. That means more efforts on equity, more efforts in environmental sustainability, greater support of small and diverse businesses. And so as we craft our recovery, and what this motion really speaks to is trying to make sure that we're living our values and investing in our values throughout this process to really achieve some of the long-held goals that have been always a challenge for us. Let's see if we can move the needle forward on those goals while also helping to build the recovery. And with that, let me turn things over to Aaron to go into more specifics.
Aaron, you should have just gotten your unmute prompt.
Thanks, Eric, Executive Director and Commissioners. This is Aaron Pritchard. This recovery motion looks down the road to restore, sustain, and maximize our aviation and maritime operations in response to the pandemic. How the port engages in recovery versus the relief that we discussed and passed in the last motion will be critical in the months and years to follow the pandemic. This motion adopts a set of principles to guide the Executive Director when making decisions in three major areas: Port's employees and our partners, the Port's capital programs, and about our economic development and community investment programs. The motion also gives a timeline for reporting back to the Commission. I will highlight each of these sections. Under the Port employees and partners section, this motion supports once again the ongoing efforts by the Executive Director to maximize telework and telework policies and leave policies by the Executive Director. And it has asked the Executive Director to keep Port employees working and to offer retraining where necessary. It also asked the Executive Director to consider offering youth internships to provide a direct short-term benefit to the most vulnerable youth in our communities, and in particular to consider those youth whose parents have lost employment. The motion asks the Executive Director to coordinate with our state and federal and regional partners to identify resources to maximize our impact. For tenants and concessionaires, this motion is set out to protect the economic vitality of the Port and our business partners. The Executive Director may consider adjusting agreements in a manner that serves the financial interests of the Port, our tenants and concessionaires. In particular, for those tenants who are directly impacted by the pandemic, those that can commit to providing services and can generate revenue, those who may not be eligible for other aid, small and diverse businesses, independent contractors, hourly wage workers, gig workers, artists and craftsmen, and nonprofits and not-for-profits. Under the capital program section, the Executive Director is directed to maximize economic impact. In particular, to facilitate recovery for key port sectors in construction, trade, fishing, tourism, and travel. He's directed to prioritize programs that have high utilization rates under our diversity and contract program, to enhance small business opportunities, and to maintain the Port's focus on environmental sustainability goals. Under the economic development and community investment programs, the Executive Director will consider existing grants and community benefit programs like, for example, the Economic Development Partnership Program, our Tourism Marketing Support Program, the Duwamish Valley Community Equity Program, and the South King County Fund, as well as others. In particular, the Executive Director will seek partnerships to maximize our funding impact, to identify partnerships and to coordinate efforts to create a multiplier effect on any port funding. Under the timeline section, the Executive Director shall deliver to Commission by April 28th a draft early action recovery plan. By December 31st of 2020, the Executive Director will update the Commission on recovery implementation efforts and continue to provide updates on a quarterly basis throughout 2021. That concludes my summary of the motion, and I'll turn it back over to Commission President.
All right, Aaron, thank you very much, and thanks for your tremendous work on this as well. It's quite a package of directions to our leadership here, but I think it really is a great roadmap for moving forward, and we very much look forward to seeing the Executive Director's draft early action recovery plan by the end of this month. So with that, let's open it up for commission comments and questions.
Okay, we will start with Commissioner Fellman. Let me get him unmuted. Commissioner Fellman?
Yes, hi. I would like to take the moment that I haven't had a chance to do to thank the employees of this organization for this tremendous amount of work. It is truly heroic. And there's a great quote in on Twitter these days, which is, the authority that everybody quotes these days. You're not working at home, you're at home trying to work during a crisis. And to have the staff holding down the fort, being able to take the input from commissioners, we're all very stressed and concerned. This has been a tremendous work of over a relatively short period of time. And I'm very happy with the motion, the way it reads currently, and just really want to express my heartfelt support. And the public should really know what it really takes to do this, especially at such times.
Great, and now I will go to Commissioner Cho. Commissioner Cho?
I don't have any further questions or comments. I just want to say that I support this motion.
Oh, Commissioner Cho, it looks like you got muted again. You should have received the prompt now.
Oh yeah, I don't have any further questions or comments. I support this motion.
Great. And then we will go to Commissioner Calkins. Commissioner Calkins?
This is a bit of a comment as we provide direction for staff. I have been extraordinarily impressed by our executive leadership team and by the counsel we've received from our in-house counsel and also the external counsel that we've contracted to provide us expertise in the midst of what for me has been my first experience as an elected official in a systemic crisis like this. And we're reminded in this process that we were chartered with a very specific purpose at the port, and so that does encumber our ability to sort of throw the sashes open and do everything that we could possibly do. We do have some limitations based on the charter that we were established with. At the same time, I do want us to recognize that structurally, as we provide relief for the various stakeholders of the Port of Seattle, that we don't want to let some of the fact that serving one set of stakeholders may be simpler or easier than serving another to determine how we allocate those resources. We should do it as best as possible by an assessment of need and not by an assessment of what's easiest. And so in these coming months, as we continue to try to address needs through what relief we can provide, through staff resources or monetary resources, I want us to continue to explore every option we can that's legally defensible to provide resources to those in need, and to not forget that our stakeholders include everyone and not just the large organizations that have powerful advocates on their payrolls too.
Okay, Commissioner Bowman.
Yep. Commissioner Bowman, mute now.
Yep, I can hear you. Thank you very much. I just had a process question. Are we just doing a first reading of this motion, or are we intending to adopt it today?
Adopt.
Okay, I've been under the impression that we were just doing a first reading.
It's a vote. It's a motion and a vote. It's in the agenda.
All right. Well, I again want to thank the staff for putting it together. I think I'll look forward to what Steve and the rest of his leadership team come up with in terms of a specific action plan by the 28th. And I know that work is already underway. You haven't been waiting for us to begin that work, particularly on prioritizing our capital investment program. I think what is unique about the Port of Seattle, different from the City of Seattle or King County, is the breadth of our capital program, whether it's at the airport, the seaport, at Fisherman's Terminal or at our cruise terminals. We're building at all of those different locations throughout, and in addition throughout the region, not just in the city of Seattle. So I really look forward to what our executive director will bring forward in terms of priority capital investments. That will probably be a different list than what we adopted at the end of last year in the budget, but I look forward to that. I wanted to also thank the executive director for considering the youth internship program, obviously something that's near and dear to my heart. I'd ask my fellow commissioners to consider their support for that as well. While I know that might seem a bit counterintuitive at this point, by prioritizing short-term summer employment for youth whose parents are impacted by unemployment by COVID-19, I think is one of the best things that we can do. As we're looking forward to the next couple of months, obviously there are adults that have been working their entire adult life that are now out of work. Imagine how difficult it's going to be for a student in high school to try and find a job this summer. It's going to be nearly impossible. So if the Port of Seattle can step into that role, even in a diminished way than we have in the past, I really appreciate the fact that we would lean into that opportunity. The only thing I would ask is that this does have a lot of different priorities, and so I would hope that we're trying to prioritize a lot of different things at the same time. So I'd go back to the motion that we just passed and ask that the staff really take a hard look at those businesses that are most directly impacted by the pandemic and the restrictions that have been implemented to address it. Because unfortunately, as I said earlier, not all of our tenants are experiencing impacts in the same way. And so whatever resources we provide, I really hope it's to those that have had to close their doors because of the governor's stay-at-home order, and that those that have been perhaps just having to work from home would understand that we might not be able to provide the same level of support to them. But with that, I agree with the spirit of, if I may, the spirit of the motion, and I'm happy to move it forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowman, and to all my colleagues on the commission. I want to just add a couple of comments here about the importance of this motion. We really don't have the time to dither now, and we are not dithering, and we are taking action today on the important steps forward, and this is a part of those steps in terms of advancing early recovery efforts. The port, of course, is uniquely positioned, as we know, as the job generator and the economic engine for the state. And with that in mind, our mission is now our mandate in the recovery efforts. And it's urgent that we move forward. So with that said, I will close and just again add thanks to Eric Schinfeld, who was instrumental in working between commissioners and our leadership staff and port team to pull this together, I think, in record time. It shows we can do it, we can take action, and we can provide the leadership necessary for going forward. With that, I'd like to call the clerk. I'd like to ask the clerk to call. I'd say, do we need a motion? Yes, we do. We need a motion to adopt 2020-06.
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Is there a second to the motion?
I just had to wait for my mute to come off.
And it should be all of our privilege to move and second this. But nevertheless, clerk, will you call the vote?
Certainly. Commissioner Bowman?
Aye.
Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Cho?
Aye.
Commissioner Fellman?
Aye.
And Commissioner Steinbrook?
Aye.
That is 5 yeas and 0 nays.
Commissioner Steinbrook, if I could just say a couple words about this.
Yes, please.
Just want to follow up on one of the items, which is the capital programs, that's probably the first one, and I thank you for passing this, and I think it will really be useful as we come back to you, not at the end of the month on capital programs, but sooner than that, for your consideration, taking these priorities and principles and looking at that. Just as Commissioner Bowman said, I think that's one of the most important things that we can do. And this guidance will help us formulate that list and re-look at just not just our monies in 2020, but our whole 5-year capital investment program and modifying it based on what's happening today. So again, I thank you for that and thank you for this guidance. Thank you.
Okay.